The telegram had arrived 3 weeks ago, and Sarah Mitchell still couldn't believe she'd actually done it. Answered an advertisement, agreed to marry a stranger, boarded a train heading west to Montana Territory. But what choice did she have? After her father's death, left her penniless, and her aunt made it clear she was no longer welcome. The advertisement in the Boston Herald seemed like divine intervention. Farmer seeking wife, must be of good character and willing to work. Age and appearance unimportant. That last line had caught her breath. Age and appearance unimportant. At 28, she'd been told repeatedly she was too old, too plain, too poor to expect any man's interest. Her mousy brown hair and unremarkable features had never turned heads. She was too tall, too thin, with hands already roughened from taking in sewing to survive. The stagecoach hit another rut, and Sarah gripped the worn leather seat. 3 other passengers shared the cramped space, but none had spoken to her since they left the last town. She pressed her forehead against the dusty window, watching the endless Montana grassland roll past under a sky so big it made her heart ache. What if he took one look at her and sent her back? The journey had taken every penny she had. There was no going back, even if he rejected her. Whoa there! The stagecoach lurched to a stop. Sarah's carpet bag tumbled from the overhead rack, and she caught it awkwardly. "Copper Creek!" the driver called. "End of the line for some of you folks." Sarah's hands trembled as she gathered her belongings. This was it, the moment that would determine her entire future. She stepped down from the coach onto the dusty main street of Copper Creek, Montana. It wasn't much of a town. A general store, a saloon, a church with peeling white paint, and a handful of other buildings scattered along the rutted road. Mountains rose in the distance, their peaks still touched with snow even in late May. "Miss Mitchell," Sarah turned. A boy of about 12 stood beside a weathered wagon, studying her with curious brown eyes. He was thin, with dark hair that stuck up in the back, wearing clothes that had been mended more than once. "Yes, I'm Sarah Mitchell. I'm Danny Thornton." He shuffled his feet. "My pa sent me to fetch you. He had to stay at the farm, lambing season and all." Sarah's heart sank a little. Her future husband couldn't even be bothered to meet her himself. "I see," she said quietly. "Well, it's nice to meet you, Danny." The boy's face brightened at her gentle tone. He grabbed her carpet bag before she could protest and heaved it into the wagon bed. "You can sit up front with me, Mom. It's about an hour's ride to the farm." As they left town, Danny kept stealing glances at her. "You can ask," Sarah said finally. "Whatever you're wondering, are you really going to marry my pa?" "That's the plan, if he'll have me." "Why wouldn't he have you?" Danny looked genuinely confused. Sarah smiled sadly. "I'm not exactly what most men hope for in a wife. I'm too old, too plain. Pa don't care about that stuff," Danny interrupted. "He just wants someone kind. Someone who won't—" He stopped abruptly. "Won't what?" "Nothing, ma'am." But his jaw was set in a way that reminded her of her own stubborn streak. They rode in silence for a while. The landscape was beautiful in a wild, untamed way. Rolling grassland stretched endlessly, dotted with cattle. A creek wound through a valley, lined with cottonwood trees just coming into leaf. "That's our land," Danny said with quiet pride. "Pa built it all himself. After my ma died, folks said he'd lose the farm. But he didn't. He worked harder than any 3 men. Folks respect him now." "How long ago did your mother pass?" Sarah asked gently. 5 years. I was 7. Danny's voice went quiet. "I don't remember her much anymore. Just little things. The way she smelled like lavender. How she used to sing while she cooked." Sarah's throat tightened. "I'm sure she was wonderful. Pa don't talk about her, but sometimes at night I hear him. Well, anyway," Danny cleared his throat. "There's the farm." Sarah's breath caught. Nestled in a valley with the creek running beside it, the farm was modest but well kept. A 2-story log house with a stone chimney, a large barn, recently painted, corrals with sheep and a few horses, fields already planted and showing green. And standing by the barn, watching their approach, was the largest man Sarah had ever seen. He had to be at least 6.5 feet tall, with shoulders that seemed impossibly broad. As they drew closer, she could make out dark hair, sun-bronzed skin, and a face that might have been carved from the mountains themselves. All hard angles and rough edges. Sarah's mouth went dry. This was James Thornton, the man she'd agreed to marry. He looked like he could snap her in half without trying. The wagon stopped, and Danny jumped down. "Pa, this is Miss Mitchell. Miss Sarah Mitchell." James Thornton didn't move. He just stood there, studying her with eyes so dark they were almost black. His gaze traveled from her face down to her worn traveling dress and back up again. His expression was completely unreadable. Sarah forced herself to step down from the wagon, even though her legs felt unsteady. She was tall for a woman, but she still barely came up to his shoulder. "Mr. Thornton," she managed, "I'm pleased to meet you." For a long moment, he said nothing. Then in a voice like distant thunder, "You're smaller than I expected." Heat rushed to Sarah's face. "I'm sorry to disappoint." "Didn't say I was disappointed." His voice was rough, as if he didn't use it much. "Just, you're small, delicate looking. I assure you I'm quite sturdy. I can work hard. I won't be a burden." "That's not what I meant." He ran a hand through his hair, looking uncomfortable. "Come inside. You must be tired from traveling." He turned and walked toward the house, his long strides eating up the ground. Danny grabbed Sarah's bag and hurried after him. Sarah followed more slowly, her heart hammering. Inside, the house was clean but sparse. A large main room with a stone fireplace, a kitchen area with a sturdy table, and stairs leading up to what must be bedrooms. Everything was neat, almost military in its organization, but there were no soft touches, no curtains, no tablecloth, no flowers. "Danny, show Miss Mitchell to the spare room," James said. "She can rest before supper." "Yes, Pa." Danny headed up the stairs. Sarah started to follow, but James's voice stopped her. "Miss Mitchell." She turned. He was standing by the fireplace, one arm braced against the mantel, looking at her with an intensity that made her skin tingle. "I want you to know you don't have to do this. Marry me, I mean. If you've changed your mind, I'll give you money for the return trip." "No questions asked." Pride stiffened her spine. "Have you changed your mind, Mr. Thornton? Am I not what you hoped for?" "No." The word came out forcefully. You're fine, better than fine. I just want you to know you have a choice. I made my choice when I boarded the train in Boston." She lifted her chin. "Unless you're having second thoughts." Something flickered in his dark eyes. "No second thoughts, but I want you to be sure. This is a hard life out here, lonely, and I'm not—" He gestured at himself helplessly. "I'm not an easy man. I don't talk much. Don't know how to be soft. I didn't come here looking for soft, Mr. Thornton. I came here looking for honest, for a chance at a real life." She paused. "Is that something you can give me?" He stared at her for a long moment. Then, slowly, he nodded. "Yes, I can give you that." "Then we have an understanding. There's a preacher in town. I thought, tomorrow, if that suits you." Tomorrow. She'd be married tomorrow to this giant, silent stranger. "That suits me fine," Sarah heard herself say. That night, Sarah lay in the narrow bed in the spare room, listening to the unfamiliar sounds of the farm. Sheep bleating softly, the wind in the cottonwoods. Footsteps below as James banked the fire for the night. She should be terrified. Instead, she felt oddly calm. Yes, James Thornton was intimidating, but he'd been respectful. He'd given her a choice, even when it clearly wasn't in his best interest, and the way he'd looked at her, like she was something precious, something that might break if handled roughly. Sarah touched her lips in the darkness, wondering what it would be like when he kissed her. Would he be gentle, or would that barely restrained power she sensed in him break free? A shiver ran through her that had nothing to do with cold. The wedding was brief and awkward. Sarah wore her only good dress, a dove-grey silk that had belonged to her mother. James wore what were clearly his Sunday clothes, his hair still damp from washing. Danny stood beside them, trying not to fidget. The preacher, a kindly older man named Reverend Walsh, smiled at them both. "Do you, James Thornton, take this woman to be your lawfully wedded wife?" "I do." His voice was steady. "Sure. And do you, Sarah Mitchell, take this man to be your lawfully wedded husband?" Sarah looked up at James. His dark eyes were fixed on her face with an intensity that stole her breath. "I do," she whispered. "Then by the power vested in me, I now pronounce you man and wife. James, you may kiss your bride." James went very still. Then, slowly, he bent down. His hands, large and calloused, cupped her face with surprising gentleness. For just a moment, their eyes met. Then his lips touched hers, soft, careful, over almost before it began. But Sarah felt that brief contact all the way to her toes. They had a simple meal at the hotel in town, the three of them. Danny chatted nervously, filling the silence. James said little, but his eyes kept finding Sarah's across the table. On the ride back to the farm, Sarah sat between James and Danny on the wagon seat. Every jolt of the wheels brought her shoulder against James's arm. She was acutely aware of his size, his warmth, the way his hands handled the reins with quiet competence. "Danny," James said as they neared the farm. "You'll sleep in the barn loft tonight." "But Pa, you've been wanting to sleep up there, closer to the animals." James's tone left no room for argument. "Tonight's a good night for it." Danny's ears turned red. "Oh, right. Yes, Pa." Sarah's own cheeks burned. Of course, they were married now. They'd be expected to share a bed. Her stomach twisted with nerves. As the sun set, Danny made himself scarce. James added wood to the fire, his movements deliberate. Sarah stood by the table, unsure what to do with her hands. "Sarah," his voice was quiet. "Come here." She crossed to him on shaking legs. He was standing by the fire, the flames casting shadows across his face. Up close, she could see the lines around his eyes, the silver just starting at his temples. He had to be in his mid-30s, she guessed. "I want you to understand something," he said. His hands hung at his sides, clenched into fists. It's been 5 years since I touched a woman, since my wife died." Sarah's heart pounded. "I understand." "Do you?" His jaw tightened. "I'm trying to tell you that I want you, more than I probably should given we just met. But I'll be gentle. I'll go slow. I won't hurt you. I know you won't." And somehow she did know. This man might be rough around the edges, but he wouldn't be cruel. Do you know what happens between a husband and wife?" Heat flooded Sarah's face. "I know the basics. From books, mostly. And my aunt explained some things before I left." "Books?" A hint of a smile touched his mouth. "Real life is different from books." "I imagine so." He reached out, his fingers brushing her cheek. The touch was feather-light, almost reverent. "You're trembling." "I'm nervous," she admitted. "So am I." That surprised her. "You are?" "Terrified." His thumb traced her jawline. "You're so small. So delicate. I'm afraid I'll break you." "I'm stronger than I look." "I'm counting on that." His voice had gone rough. "Because I don't know if I could be as gentle as I should be. Not when you're looking at me like that." "Like what?" "Like you trust me." His hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up. "Like you want this too." "I do," Sarah breathed. "I do want this." His control seemed to snap. He pulled her against him, one arm banding around her waist, and claimed her mouth with his. This kiss was nothing like the chaste peck at the church. This was hungry, demanding, full of 5 years of loneliness and need. Sarah gasped, and he gentled immediately, his lips softening against hers. "Sorry," he murmured. "Too rough?" "No." She gripped his shirt, pulling him back down. "Don't stop." He made a sound low in his throat, almost a growl. Then he was kissing her again, deeper this time, his tongue sliding against hers. Sarah's knees went weak, and his arm tightened, holding her up. When he finally pulled back, they were both breathing hard. "Upstairs," he said roughly, "before I take you right here on the floor." He swept her up into his arms, as if she weighed nothing. Sarah clung to his neck as he carried her up the stairs to his bedroom. Their bedroom now. He set her down beside the bed, his hands immediately going to the buttons of her dress. "Tell me if I go too fast," he said. "Tell me if you want me to stop." "I will." But she didn't think she'd want him to stop, not when his hands were creating such wonderful sensations everywhere they touched. Her dress pooled at her feet, then her petticoats. Her corset took him longer, his big fingers clumsy with the laces. "Damn things," he muttered. Despite her nerves, Sarah laughed. The sound seemed to relax him. He smiled, really smiled, for the first time since she'd met him. "There," he said as the corset finally came loose. "That's better. I like hearing you laugh." He pulled her chemise over her head, and suddenly Sarah was standing in nothing but her stockings. The firelight from downstairs cast a warm glow through the open door, painting her skin gold. James's breath caught. "Lord, you're beautiful." "I'm not." "You are." His voice was fierce. "Don't argue with me about this. You're beautiful, and I intend to spend all night proving it to you." Then his hands were on her, skimming over her shoulders, down her arms, across her waist, mapping her body with a thoroughness that made her shiver. "Cold?" he asked. "No. Nervous. And other things." "Other things." His hands stilled on her waist. "Things I don't have words for. Things that feel good." "Show me." He took her hand and placed it on his chest. "Touch me. I want to feel your hands on me." With trembling fingers, Sarah unbuttoned his shirt. He shrugged out of it, and she pressed her palms against the warm, hard planes of his chest. He was all muscle and power, with scars here and there that spoke of a hard life. "What happened here?" She traced a long scar across his ribs. "Barn-building accident. Fell on a nail. And this one." Another scar on his shoulder. "Stubborn bull." He caught her hand. pressing a kiss to her palm. "Enough about my scars. Come to bed." He pulled back the quilts and lifted her onto the bed. The mattress was firm, the sheets clean and smelling of soap and sunshine. James sat on the edge to remove his boots, then stood to remove the rest of his clothes. Sarah tried not to stare, but she couldn't help it. He was magnificent, all broad shoulders and lean hips and powerful thighs, and other things she didn't quite understand, but instinctively knew were important. He stretched out beside her, propping himself on one elbow to look down at her. "Still nervous?" he asked softly. "A little, but more curious." "Curious is good." His hand settled on her stomach, warm and heavy. "I'm going to touch you now, places no one's touched you before. If it's too much, just say so." She nodded, not trusting her voice. His hand moved lower, and Sarah's breath hitched. His touch was gentle but sure, creating sensations she'd never imagined. Heat pooled low in her belly, spreading through her limbs like honey. "That's it," he murmured. "Just feel. Don't think." But thinking was impossible anyway. There was only sensation, the stroke of his fingers, the press of his mouth against her throat, the weight of his body half covering hers. "James," she gasped, "I feel strange, like something's building." "I know, sweetheart. Let it happen. Trust me." And she did trust him completely. She let the sensations build and build until they crested in a wave of pleasure that made her cry out. James held her through it, murmuring soothing words against her hair. When she could breathe again, she looked up at him. His face was taut with control, his body rigid against hers. "Now?" she whispered. "Now." He shifted, settling between her thighs. "This might hurt at first, but I'll go slow as I can." She felt him press against her and tensed. "Breathe," he said. "Look at me, Sarah." She met his eyes. They were dark and intense, but so full of tenderness it made her chest ache. "I've got you," he said. Then he began to push inside, slowly, carefully. There was pressure, a moment of sharp pain that made her gasp. He stopped immediately. "Breathe," he said again. "The worst is over." He was right. The pain faded, replaced by a strange fullness, a feeling of connection so intimate it brought tears to her eyes. "Okay?" he asked, his voice strained. "Okay," she managed. He began to move, slow and careful at first, but as her body adjusted, as pleasure began to replace discomfort, his control started to slip. His movements became more urgent, more powerful. Sarah clung to his shoulders, overwhelmed by sensation, by the way he filled her, by the desperate sounds he made against her throat, by the way her own body responded, moving with him instinctively. "Sarah," he groaned, "I can't. I have to. It's all right." She gasped. "I want you to." He thrust deep one final time, his whole body going rigid as he found his release. Then he collapsed beside her, gathering her close against his chest. They lay tangled together, their breathing gradually slowing. James's hand stroked her hair with infinite gentleness. "Did I hurt you?" he asked quietly. "A little, at first, but then," she felt her cheeks heat. "It was wonderful." She felt him smile against her hair. "It was. Wasn't it better than I remembered? Better than I thought it could be. Because it's been so long. Because it's you." He tilted her face up, his thumb brushing her cheek. "I know we just met. I know this is strange and sudden, but Sarah, I think this might actually work. Us, I mean." Hope bloomed in her chest. "I think so too." He kissed her then, slow and sweet. When he pulled back, his eyes were serious. "I'll try to be a good husband to you. I'll work hard, provide for you, protect you. I might not always have the right words, but I'll show you every day that you matter to me. And I'll try to be a good wife. I'll keep your house, care for Danny, stand beside you through whatever comes." She paused. "We'll figure it out together." "Together," he repeated, as if trying out the word. I like the sound of that. They made love twice more that night, each time slower and more tender than the last. By the time exhaustion claimed them, Sarah felt thoroughly claimed in return, marked as his in ways that had nothing to do with law or custom and everything to do with the heart. The next morning, Sarah woke to sunlight streaming through the window and the sound of voices below. She stretched, feeling pleasantly sore in unfamiliar places, and smiled at the memories of the night before. James's side of the bed was empty, but still warm. She could hear him downstairs with Danny, their voices a low rumble punctuated by the boys' higher tones. Sarah rose and dressed quickly in a simple work dress. When she came down the stairs, Both Thornton men looked up. Danny's eyes widened. "Morning, Mom. What should I call you?" Sarah's heart squeezed. "Whatever feels right to you, Danny. Ma is fine, or Sarah. Whatever you're comfortable with." "Ma," he tried it out, a shy smile crossing his face. "Ma, are you hungry? I can make flapjacks. They're not very good, but I'll make breakfast," Sarah said. "You two have work to do, I imagine." James crossed to her, and for a moment she thought he might kiss her in front of Danny. Instead, he brushed his fingers against her cheek, a gesture that was somehow more intimate than a kiss. "Sleep well?" he asked, his eyes dark with memory. "Very well," she managed. "Good." His voice dropped to a whisper only she could hear. "Tonight, I'll make sure you sleep even better." Heat rushed through her. Before she could respond, he'd turned and was heading for the door with Danny. "Sheep need checking," he said over his shoulder. "We'll be back for lunch." And then they were gone, leaving Sarah alone in her new home. She stood for a moment, taking it all in. This rough log house in the middle of Montana territory, so different from her life in Boston, but somehow it felt more like home than anywhere she'd ever been. She rolled up her sleeves and got to work. By the time James and Danny returned for lunch, Sarah had transformed the house. Curtains she'd made on the journey hung in the windows. A tablecloth covered the scarred table. Wildflowers picked from beside the creek sat in a jar, adding spots of color, and the smell of fresh bread and stew filled the air. James stopped in the doorway, his eyes traveling around the room. When they landed on Sarah, something softened in his expression. "You've been busy," he said. "I hope you don't mind. I thought it could use a woman's touch." "Mind?" He crossed to her, his hands settling on her waist. "It's perfect. You're perfect." Danny made a gagging sound. "Are you two going to be mushy all the time now?" James laughed, an actual laugh that transformed his whole face. "Probably. You better get used to it." The days settled into a rhythm. Sarah worked from dawn to dusk, but it was satisfying work. She tended the vegetable garden, discovering she had a knack for making things grow. She sewed new clothes for Danny, who was shooting up like a weed. She cooked meals that made both her men groan with pleasure, and at night she and James explored each other with growing confidence and creativity. "I never knew," she confessed one night as they lay tangled together, "that it could be like this, that I could feel so much." "Neither did I," James admitted. "With Margaret, it was fine, good even, but not like this, not this," he struggled for words. "Consuming," Sarah offered. "Yes, like I can't get enough of you, like I'll never get enough." He proved it by pulling her on top of him, showing her yet another way they could fit together. The first real test of their marriage came 6 weeks after the wedding. Sarah woke one morning to find James already dressed, standing by the window with a tent set to his shoulders. "What's wrong?" she asked, sitting up. "Storm coming." His voice was tight. "Bad one, from the look of those clouds. We need to get the sheep into the lower pasture, secure the barn, bring in extra firewood." Sarah dressed quickly and helped Danny prepare breakfast while James checked the animals. The sky had turned an ominous grey-green, and the air felt heavy and charged. "Ma, Sarah," Danny said quietly as they worked, "when storms come, Pa gets different, quiet, angry almost. It's because of how my real Ma died." Sarah's hand stilled. "I thought she died in childbirth." "She did, but there was a storm that night, the worst storm anyone had ever seen. The midwife couldn't get to the farm. Pa tried to help her himself, but—" Danny's voice broke. "He blames himself. Says if he'd gotten her to town before the storm hit, she might have lived." Sarah's heart ached for James, for the guilt he must carry. The storm hit just after noon. Rain lashed the windows, and wind howled around the house like a living thing. Thunder crashed so loud it shook the walls. Lightning split the sky in jagged white streaks. James was outside, making sure the animals were secure. Sarah watched from the window, her stomach tight with worry. He was drenched, his shirt plastered to his body, fighting against the wind to close the barn doors. When he finally came inside, he was shaking, not from cold, Sarah realized, but from something deeper, something that lived in his memories. James. She crossed to him, helping him out of his wet clothes. "You're safe. We're all safe." This time, his voice was hollow. "But storms like this, they take things from you. They take people. Not today." Sarah cupped his face in her hands, making him look at her. "I'm here. Danny's here. We're all safe and dry and together." He pulled her against him suddenly, desperately, burying his face in her hair. His whole body trembled. "I can't lose you," he whispered. "I can't go through that again. When I'm out there in the storm, all I can think about is what if something happens to you while I'm gone? What if you need me and I can't get to you? Then stay with me. Sarah held him tight. The animals are secure. The barn is closed. Stay here with me and Danny. Ride out the storm together. He nodded against her shoulder. They moved to the fireplace, and Sarah wrapped him in a quilt while she made hot coffee. Danny sat close to his father, a silent presence of comfort. The storm raged for hours, but inside the house something shifted. James talked about Margaret for the first time since Sarah had arrived, about how young they'd been, how unprepared he'd been for the reality of frontier life, how helpless he'd felt when she'd needed him most. "I should have taken her to town earlier," he said. "Should have insisted, but she said she was fine. Said babies come when they're ready, and I believed her because I wanted to believe her." "You couldn't have known," Sarah said softly. "Couldn't I? The storm had been building all day. I saw the signs. But I had work to do, sheep to tend, a fence to mend." His voice was bitter. "I chose the farm over my wife's safety. You chose to provide for your family," Sarah corrected gently. "That's not the same thing. And even if you'd taken her to town, James, sometimes things happen that are beyond our control. Sometimes babies they just don't make it. And sometimes their mothers don't either. It's not fair and it's not right, but it's not your fault." Danny spoke up quietly. "Ma used to say that God has a plan we can't see, that sometimes he calls people home, even when we're not ready to let them go." James looked at his son, really looked at him, perhaps for the first time in years. "When did you get so wise?" "I had a good ma," Danny said, "and now I have another good ma. Maybe that was part of the plan too." Sarah's eyes filled with tears. James reached for both of them, pulling them close. The three of them sat huddled together by the fire while the storm raged outside, and Sarah felt something settle in her chest. This was her family, not perfect, but real, bound by loss and hope, and the choice to move forward together. When the storm finally passed, the world outside was transformed. The creek had swollen to twice its normal size. Branches littered the ground, but the house stood firm. The barn was intact. The sheep were safe in the lower pasture. That night James made love to Sarah with an intensity that left them both shaking. It wasn't just desire, Sarah realized. It was gratitude, relief, a desperate need to affirm that they were both alive and together. "I love you," he said fiercely, his body moving over hers. "I love you so damn much it scares me." "Then be scared with me," Sarah gasped, clinging to him. "Because I'm terrified too. Terrified of how much I need you, how much I love you." They came together in a rush of emotion and sensation, crying out each other's names like prayers. Afterward, James held her close. His hand splayed possessively over her stomach. "If we have a child," he said quietly, "and there's a storm, I'll take you to town early. I don't care if you think it's unnecessary. I don't care if it's inconvenient. I won't take that chance again." "All right," Sarah agreed. "If it gives you peace, we'll go to town early." "Thank you." He kissed her temple. "Thank you for understanding, for not thinking I'm foolish." "You're not foolish. You're a man who lost someone he loved. That leaves scars. But James, you're allowed to be happy again. You're allowed to love again, without feeling guilty about it. I'm learning that." His voice was rough. "You're teaching me that. Every day." 2 weeks later, Sarah woke feeling queasy. She barely made it outside before she was sick in the bushes. James found her there, pale and trembling, and his face went white. "Sarah, what's wrong? Should I get the doctor?" "I don't think we need a doctor," Sarah said weakly. I think I might be with child." He stared at her. Then slowly a smile spread across his face. Not just any smile, but one of pure, unfiltered joy. "A baby," his voice was reverent. "We're going to have a baby." "I think so. It's early yet, but all the signs are there." He swept her up in his arms, spinning her around despite her protests that she might be sick again. When he set her down, his eyes were bright with moisture. "I'm going to do it right this time," he said fiercely. "I'm going to take care of you, both of you. Nothing's going to happen to you, Sarah, I swear it." "I believe you," she said, touching his face. "I trust you, James." True to his word, James became almost obsessively protective. He insisted Sarah rest more. He took over the heavier chores. He checked on her constantly, as if she might disappear if he looked away for too long. "James, I'm pregnant, not made of glass," Sarah protested one afternoon when he refused to let her carry a basket of laundry. "Humor me," he said. Please, I need to do this." So Sarah humored him, even when it drove her a little crazy, because she understood. This was how James showed love, through protection, through provision, through making sure nothing bad happened to the people he cared about. As her belly swelled, the community began to take notice. Women Sarah had never met stopped by with advice and hand-me-down baby clothes. The general store owner gave her a discount on fabric for making baby gowns. Even Reverend Walsh came by to offer his blessings. But Victoria Calhoun remained conspicuously absent, until one day in late fall, when Sarah was hanging herbs to dry in the kitchen, and Victoria appeared at the door. "May I come in?" Victoria asked. Her voice was different, quieter, less sharp. Sarah hesitated, then stepped aside. "Of course." Victoria entered slowly, her eyes taking in the transformed house. The curtains, the flowers, the signs of a home, truly lived in. "I owe you an apology," Victoria said abruptly, "for what I said when you first arrived. It was cruel and uncalled for." Sarah waited, saying nothing. "I was jealous," Victoria continued. "I've spent my whole life being told I was beautiful, that I could have any man I wanted. But the one man I actually wanted, he chose someone else. Twice." She laughed bitterly. "It was humbling, and I didn't handle it well." "Why are you telling me this?" Sarah asked. "Because I saw you in town last week, with James and Danny. The way he looks at you," Victoria's voice caught. "He never looked at me that way. Never looked at Margaret that way, from what I remember. He looks at you like you hung the moon and stars." Sarah's hand went to her rounded belly. "He's a good man." "He is, and you're good for him." Victoria met her eyes. "I can see that now. He's happier than I've ever seen him. Lighter, like a weight's been lifted. That's because of you." "It's because he chose to be happy," Sarah corrected gently. "I'm just the lucky woman who gets to share that happiness." Victoria smiled sadly. "You're generous, more generous than I deserve. I just wanted you to know. I won't cause trouble anymore. And if you ever need anything at all, my ranch is just over the ridge." After Victoria left, Sarah stood in the doorway, watching her ride away. James came up behind her, his arms going around her waist, his hands resting on their child. "What did she want?" he asked. "To apologize, to make peace." Sarah leaned back against him. "I think she finally accepted that you're truly happy." "I am happy." He nuzzled her neck. "Happier than I ever thought possible. You did that, Sarah. You and this little one." He patted her belly gently. The baby kicked, and both of them laughed. "Strong," James said approvingly. "Just like Mama." 2 weeks after Victoria's visit, a traveling preacher came through the valley, organizing a community barn dance. It would be Sarah's first major social gathering as Mrs. Thornton, and she felt both excited and anxious about it. "What if they don't accept me?" she asked James as she pressed her best dress, the fabric straining slightly over her growing belly. "What if they think you made a mistake marrying a mail-order bride?" James crossed the room and gently took the iron from her hands, setting it aside. He pulled her close, his hands coming to rest on her swollen abdomen. "Anyone who thinks I made a mistake is a damn fool," he said firmly. "You're the best thing that ever happened to me, and anyone with eyes can see how happy we are, how well you've made this house, how much Danny loves you, how you're glowing with our child. But I'm not like the other women here. I don't know how to rope cattle or shoot a rifle or—" "You know how to make a house into a home," James interrupted, his voice tender. "You know how to heal a lonely man's heart. You know how to love a boy who'd nearly forgotten what a mother's love felt like. Those things matter infinitely more than roping cattle." Sarah pressed her face against his chest, breathing in his familiar scent of soap and hay and sunshine. "I love you." "I love you too. Now stop fretting and finish getting ready. I want to show off my beautiful pregnant wife to everyone in the valley." The barn dance was held at the Morrison farm, a prosperous spread about 5 miles from the Thornton place. When they arrived in the wagon, Sarah's nervousness surged back. The barn had been swept spotless and decorated with garlands of autumn leaves and late wildflowers. Lanterns hung from the rafters, casting a warm golden glow. A small band was setting up in the corner, a fiddle player, a man with a guitar, and someone tuning a harmonica. People were already gathering in clusters, their voices creating a warm hum of conversation and laughter. Sarah recognized a few faces from church, but most were strangers to her. "James Thornton!" A large, jovial man with a bushy beard approached, clapping James heartily on the back. "About time you showed up. And this must be the new Mrs. Thornton we've all been hearing about. Sarah, this is Henry Morrison, James said, his hand protective at the small of her back. He owns this farm, and he never knows when to stop talking. Henry laughed good-naturedly. That's fair. My wife Martha's been beside herself wanting to meet you. Martha! A plump, cheerful woman with rosy cheeks hurried over, wiping her hands on her apron. Oh, my stars, look at you! Aren't you just glowing? When are you due, dear? Early spring, Sarah said, trying to match the woman's warm energy. Your first? Martha asked, then caught herself, her face flushing. Well, first with James, I mean. Danny's such a fine boy. You must be so proud of him. I am, Sarah said sincerely. He's wonderful. Martha linked her arm through Sarah's with comfortable familiarity. Come on, let me introduce you to the other ladies. We're all positively dying of curiosity about the woman who finally got James Thornton to smile again. That man was like a thundercloud for 5 years, and now look at him, practically beaming. Sarah glanced back at James, who gave her an encouraging nod and a small smile that made her heart flutter. Then she allowed Martha to lead her toward a cluster of women gathered near the refreshment table, laden with pies, cakes, and jugs of cider. Ladies, this is Sarah Thornton. Sarah, this is everyone. Martha laughed at her own joke. We've got Elizabeth Cooper. Her husband runs the general store. Anna Jensen. She and her husband have the farm north of here. Mary O'Brien. Her family has been in this valley longer than anyone. And Catherine Walsh. That's our dear Reverend's wife. The women greeted her with varying degrees of warmth. Elizabeth seemed genuinely friendly, her smile reaching her eyes. Anna was more reserved but polite, offering a slight nod. Mary appeared openly skeptical, her sharp eyes travelling over Sarah's simple dress and pronounced belly. Catherine smiled with the practiced warmth of a preacher's wife. So you're from Boston? Mary asked, her tone carrying a note of challenge. That's quite a distance. Must be quite a change, coming out here to our rough frontier life. It is different, Sarah admitted honestly. But it's a good kind of different. I love it here. The mountains, the wide sky, the sense of community. Even in winter, Mary's eyebrow arched. When you're snowed in for weeks at a time. When the nearest neighbor is miles away and the wind howls like a demon. When you have to butcher your own meat and preserve your own food and make everything from scratch. Mary, Elizabeth said with a warning note in her voice. I'm just being honest, Mary continued, undeterred. City girls don't usually last long out here. They come thinking it'll be some grand romantic adventure, and then winter hits and reality sets in. I've seen it happen more times than I can count. Sarah felt heat rise to her cheeks, but she kept her voice steady and calm. I didn't come here thinking it would be romantic, Mrs. O'Brien. I came here because I had nowhere else to go and nothing left to lose. But I'm staying because this is where I belong now. This farm, this valley, this life. Yes, it's hard. Harder than anything I've ever done. But it's real, and it's honest, and it's mine. The women fell silent for a moment. Mary's expression shifted, something softening in her stern features. Well, Mary said finally, that's the most honest thing I've heard from a newcomer in years. Maybe you will last after all. Sarah makes the most incredible bread I've ever tasted, Catherine offered, breaking the tension. She brought a loaf to church last month, and it was gone before the final hymn. I've been trying to get the recipe, and she's completely transformed James's house, Elizabeth added enthusiastically. I stopped by last week with some extra preserves, and I hardly recognized the place. It actually looks like a home now instead of a bachelor's quarters. Curtains in the windows, flowers on the table, the smell of baking bread. It's lovely. The conversation shifted to recipes and household tips and the best ways to preserve various vegetables. Sarah began to relax as she realized these women weren't so different from her after all. They were just trying to survive and make the best of their hard lives, same as she was. They were testing her, yes, but not to be cruel, simply to see if she had the backbone to belong here. The music started up, a lively fiddle tune that had people's feet tapping. James appeared at her elbow, his presence solid and reassuring. Dance with me? He asked, holding out his hand. Sarah glanced down at her prominent belly. "I'm not very graceful these days. I waddle more than I walk." "You're perfect." He led her onto the makeshift dance floor, his hand gentle and protective at her waist, careful to accommodate her changed shape. They swayed together to a slower waltz that the band had shifted into, and Sarah was acutely aware of the curious eyes watching them from every corner of the barn. James must have sensed her tension because he leaned down, his breath warm against her ear. "Don't look at them. Look at me." She met his dark eyes, and suddenly the rest of the room seemed to fade away. There was only James, holding her carefully, looking at her with such tenderness and desire that it made her breath catch. "You're doing it again," she murmured. "Doing what?" "Looking at me like I'm the most precious thing you've ever seen." "That's because you are. You and our baby." His hand splayed protectively over her belly, and she felt their child kick against his palm, as if reaching for its father. His face lit up with pure wonder. "Did you feel that?" "I feel every kick," Sarah said, laughing softly. "This baby is very active. I think we might have a restless one." "Good. Strong baby. Strong mama." He pulled her a little closer as her belly would allow. "I'm proud of you, you know. Coming here tonight even though you were nervous. Meeting everyone. Holding your own with Mary O'Brien. She's the toughest woman in the valley, and she doesn't suffer fools gladly. She's just protective of her community. I can understand and respect that." The song ended, and Danny came running up, his face flushed with excitement and a smear of what looked like berry pie on his chin. "Ma, Sarah, Mr. Morrison says there's going to be a pie-eating contest for us kids. Can I enter, please?" "Of course you can," Sarah said, resisting the urge to wipe his face. "But don't make yourself sick." "I won't," Danny promised, already running off. James chuckled, watching him go. "He's absolutely going to make himself sick." "Probably," Sarah agreed with a smile. "But he's happy and making friends. That's what matters." They spent the rest of the evening mingling with the other families. James introduced Sarah to the ranchers and farmers, the blacksmith and the mill owner, families who'd been in the valley for generations and those who'd arrived just last year. And to Sarah's relief and growing pleasure, most people were genuinely welcoming. A few asked pointed questions about where she was from and how she'd come to marry James, but most were simply curious in a friendly way. They wanted to know about Boston, about her journey west, about how she was settling into frontier life. Old Sam Patterson, a grizzled rancher with a weathered face and kind eyes who'd been in the valley for nearly 30 years, pulled James aside at one point. Sarah watched them talk, saw Sam clap James on the shoulder and nod toward her with clear approval. Later, on the ride home, with a thoroughly exhausted Danny sleeping in the back of the wagon and the vast Montana sky spread above them brilliant with stars, Sarah asked about the conversation. "Sam said I'd done well for myself," James said, his voice carrying a note of quiet pride. "Said you seemed like a woman with real spine and a good heart." That's high praise coming from Sam. He doesn't think much of most people, says most folks are either fools or scoundrels. "I liked him," Sarah said. "He told me about his late wife, Clara. They were married for 40 years before she passed last winter." 40 years, James repeated thoughtfully, his voice going soft. "That's a long time. A whole lifetime together." "It is," Sarah agreed. "But Sam said it went by faster than a heartbeat, that when you're with the right person, the years just seem to fly by." James was quiet for a long moment, his eyes on the dark road ahead. Then he said, his voice rough with emotion, "I want that with you. 40 years, 50, 60 if God grants us that long. I want to grow old with you, Sarah. Watch our children grow up and have children of their own. Build a life and a legacy that lasts. Watch your hair turn grey and see laugh lines deepen around your eyes and know that I put them there, that we built this life together." Sarah's throat tightened with emotion, tears pricking her eyes. "I want that too, more than anything I've ever wanted." He reached over and took her hand, threading his calloused fingers through hers. They rode the rest of the way home in comfortable silence, the kind that only comes when words aren't necessary, when two souls are so attuned to each other that mere presence is enough. The next morning, Sarah woke to find James already up and working in the barn. But on her bedside table was a single wild rose in a cup of water, its petals still touched with morning dew, and a note in his careful, precise handwriting. "Thank you for dancing with me last night. Thank you for being brave. Thank you for being mine. Always, Jay. Sarah held the note to her chest, her heart swelling with love for this man who claimed he didn't have the words, yet somehow always found exactly the right ones when it mattered most. As autumn deepened into winter, Sarah's pregnancy progressed. She grew larger and more uncomfortable, but James was there for every moment. He rubbed her swollen feet. He helped her into and out of bed. He talked to their unborn child every night, his big hand on her belly, telling stories about the farm and the valley and all the things they'd do together. Danny was equally excited. He'd transformed the small room next to theirs into a nursery, painting it himself in cheerful yellow. He'd carved a small wooden lamb as a first toy for his sibling. "Do you think the baby will like me?" he asked Sarah one evening as they sat by the fire. "The baby will love you," Sarah assured him. "You're going to be the best big brother." "I hope it's a girl," Danny confided. "I want a little sister to protect, like Pa protects you." Sarah's heart swelled. "Boy or girl, they'll be lucky to have you." When the first snow fell, James became even more vigilant. He stocked extra firewood. He made sure they had plenty of food stored. He checked the house for drafts and fixed everyone he found. "Getting close now," he said one night as they lay in bed. "Another month. Maybe less." "I know." Sarah was both excited and nervous. "James, what if something goes wrong?" "Nothing's going to go wrong." His voice was firm. "I've already talked to Doc Henderson. He's agreed to come stay at the Johnsons' place, just 5 miles down the road for the last 2 weeks before your time. And if there's even a hint of trouble, we're going straight to town. I don't care if it's the middle of the night or the middle of a blizzard." "You've thought of everything," Sarah said softly. "I'm trying to." He kissed her forehead. "I can't lose you, Sarah. I won't survive it." "You won't lose me. I'm strong. And I have you. That's all I need." 3 months into their marriage, Sarah realized she'd never been happier. Oh, life was hard. The work was endless. The isolation was real. And there were days when she was so tired she could barely stand. But she had purpose. She had a family. And she had James. 3 months into their marriage, Sarah realized she'd never been happier. Oh, life was hard. The work was endless. The isolation was real. And there were days when she was so tired she could barely stand. But she had purpose. She had a family. And she had James. She was hanging laundry one morning when she heard a rider approaching. Visitors were rare, and she shaded her eyes to see who it might be. A woman on a fine black horse rode up to the fence. She was beautiful, with golden hair and a figure that made Sarah acutely aware of her own angular thinness and now her swollen belly. "You must be the new Mrs. Thornton," the woman said, dismounting with practiced grace. "I'm Victoria Calhoun. My ranch borders yours to the north." "It's nice to meet you," Sarah said, wiping her hands on her apron. "Would you like some tea?" "How kind." Victoria's smile didn't reach her eyes as they fixed on Sarah's rounded stomach. "I wanted to welcome you to the valley and to see for myself what kind of woman James finally chose." There was something in her tone that set Sarah's teeth on edge. "Finally? Oh, didn't he tell you?" Victoria's eyes glittered. "James and I had an understanding, before his first wife, of course. Everyone expected us to marry. But then he met Margaret at a church social and, well," she shrugged delicately, "he married her instead." Sarah's stomach clenched, but she kept her voice steady. "That was a long time ago." "Not so long. And after Margaret died, I thought, well, I waited 5 years for him. 5 years. Victoria's mask slipped, revealing something ugly beneath. "And then he goes and marries some mail-order bride from back east. Some plain, skinny thing who probably can't even ride a horse properly, though I see you've managed to get yourself pregnant quickly enough." The crude comment made Sarah's cheeks burn. "I think you should leave. He'll realize his mistake," Victoria hissed. "He'll see that you're not enough for him, that you can't give him what he needs. And when he does, I'll be waiting." She remounted and rode off, leaving Sarah standing in the yard with her heart pounding and tears threatening. That night, Sarah couldn't hide her distress. When James asked what was wrong, she told him about Victoria's visit, including the cutting remark about her pregnancy. His face darkened with fury. "She said what to you?" "It doesn't matter." "It does matter." James's voice was tight with barely controlled anger. "She had no right to come to our home and insult my wife. I'll ride over there tomorrow and—" "No," Sarah put her hand on his arm. "Let it go. She's hurt and lashing out. I don't want you to make it worse. Sarah, she needs to know she can't treat you that way. She already knows." Sarah managed a small smile. She saw that she can't hurt what we have. That's why she's so angry. James pulled her close, careful of her belly between them. You're too forgiving. Maybe, but holding on to anger only hurts me, not her. Sarah looked up at him. James, I need to know, did you love her? Victoria? He sighed, running a hand through his hair. Her father wanted it. Victoria wanted it. But I never did. She's beautiful, I'll grant you that, but she's also cold and calculating. Even when I was young and stupid, I could see that. She wanted my land, my status in the community. She didn't want me. And Margaret was kind, gentle, safe. He cupped Sarah's face in his hands. But she wasn't you. She never made me feel like you do. Like I'm burning up from the inside. Like I can't breathe when you're not near. Like every moment with you is a gift I don't deserve. James! She couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. I love you. He said it simply, clearly. I know it's only been a few months. I know it's probably too soon to say it, but I do. I love you, Sarah Thornton. Not as a consolation prize, not as a substitute for anyone else, but as yourself, as the woman who makes me laugh, who makes me want to be better, who fits against me at night like she was made for me, who's carrying my child and glowing with it. I love you too, Sarah sobbed. I've loved you since that first night, when you were so careful with me, so gentle and patient and sweet. He kissed her then, deep and thorough. When they finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against hers. Victoria Calhoun can wait until hell freezes over, he said. I'm never letting you go. They made love right there against the kitchen table, urgent and desperate and full of emotion. James was careful with her belly, positioning her so she was comfortable, but his passion was no less intense for his tenderness. And afterward, lying tangled together on the floor, Sarah finally believed that she was exactly where she belonged. The seasons turned. Summer gave way to fall, and fall to winter. Sarah's belly grew round and full, and James treated her like the most precious thing in the world. I'm having a baby, not dying, she protested, when he insisted she rest instead of helping with the harvest. Humor me, he said, his hand splayed possessively over her stomach, feeling the baby kick. I want you and this baby safe. Both of you mean everything to me. Danny was thrilled at the prospect of a sibling. He helped Sarah prepare the nursery they'd set up in the small room next to the master bedroom, painting it cheerful yellow and helping her sew tiny gowns. James had built a beautiful cradle from oak, carving small flowers into the headboard. Do you think it'll be a boy or a girl? He asked one evening as they sat by the fire, James's arm around Sarah's shoulders, his other hand resting on her belly. Don't matter to me, James said, long as they're healthy and have their mama's sweet nature instead of their papa's grumpy one. You're not grumpy, Sarah protested, laughing. You're just selective with your smiles. That's a nice way of putting it, Danny laughed. As winter deepened, so did Sarah's discomfort. Her back ached constantly. Her feet swelled. She couldn't sleep comfortably no matter what position she tried. James did everything he could to help. He rubbed her feet every night. He supported her back with pillows. He brought her meals in bed when she was too tired to come downstairs. He talked to the baby constantly, his voice low and soothing, telling their child about the farm and the animals and how loved they would be. Not much longer now, Doc Henderson said during one of his visits. Another few weeks at most, and everything looks good. Strong heartbeat, good position. You're doing fine, Mrs. Thornton. But James still worried. Sarah could see it in the tightness around his eyes, the way he checked on her constantly, the way he'd wake in the night just to make sure she was still breathing. I'm all right, she'd whisper, taking his hand and placing it on her belly so he could feel the baby move. We're both all right. I know, he'd trail off, unable to put his fear into words. You're afraid of losing us the way you lost Margaret, Sarah said gently. But James, I'm not Margaret. I'm healthy and strong. And Doc Henderson says everything is progressing perfectly. You have to trust that. I'm trying, he said. God, I'm trying. The baby came on a cold March morning, with the snow falling softly outside. Sarah woke to cramping pain that took her breath away. James, she gasped, gripping his arm. I think it's time. He was out of bed instantly, already dressed by the time another contraction hit. I'm getting the doctor. Danny. Danny appeared in the doorway, rubbing sleep from his eyes. Pa, the baby's coming. Stay with your ma. I'll be back as fast as I can. James, wait. But he was already gone, thundering down the stairs and out into the snow. Danny came to Sarah's side, his face pale but determined. What do you need, Ma? "Help me downstairs," Sarah managed between contractions. "We need to get things ready." Together, they made their way down to the main room. Danny helped Sarah into the rocking chair and then busied himself building up the fire, boiling water, gathering clean linens, the way Doc Henderson had instructed weeks ago. The contractions came harder and faster. Sarah gripped the arms of the rocking chair, breathing through the pain. It felt like her body was being torn apart from the inside. "It's okay, Ma," Danny said, his voice shaking only a little. "Pa will be back soon with the doctor. You're doing great." But the contractions wouldn't wait. They came in waves, each one stronger than the last. Sarah felt pressure building, an overwhelming urge to push. "Danny," she gasped, "I don't think we can wait. I think the baby's coming now." The boy's eyes went wide with panic. "But Pa's not here. The doctor's not here. I don't know what to do." "You can do this," Sarah said, with more confidence than she felt. "I'll tell you what to do. We'll do it together." What followed was the most terrifying and miraculous hour of both their lives. With Sarah's guidance and Danny's trembling but steady hands, they worked together. Sarah pushed when her body told her to push, screamed when she needed to scream, and trusted this boy who had become her son to help bring his sibling into the world. And then, just as James and Doc Henderson burst through the door, covered in snow and breathing hard, a baby's cry filled the room. Danny was standing there, tears streaming down his face, holding a tiny, squirming bundle wrapped in a clean towel. "It's a girl," he said, his voice awed. "Ma, Sarah, it's a girl, and she's perfect." James crossed the room in 3 strides. His face was white, his eyes wild with fear that melted into wonder as he saw Sarah sitting there, exhausted but smiling, and Danny holding their daughter. "Sarah," James breathed, "you're all right. You're both all right." "We're fine," Sarah said weakly. Danny was amazing. He helped deliver his sister. Doc Henderson examined both Sarah and the baby, his experienced hands gentle and thorough. "Well, I'll be damned," he said finally. "You did just fine without me. Both of you did just fine." He cleaned the baby properly and handed her to Sarah. James knelt beside the rocking chair, one arm around Sarah, the other hand gently touching his daughter's tiny head. "She's beautiful," he whispered, "just like her mama." "What should we name her?" Sarah asked. James thought for a moment, looking from the baby to Danny to Sarah and back again. "Rose, for the wild roses that grow by the creek. The first beautiful thing I saw when I came to this valley. The first sign that something could bloom in this hard land. Rose Thornton." Sarah tested it out, smiling down at her daughter. "I like it. Rose Margaret Thornton, after her grandmother, and to honor the past while looking to the future." James's eyes stung with unexpected tears. Margaret would have liked that, and she would have been proud of Danny today. "Hell, I'm proud of Danny today." He reached out and pulled his son into their circle. "You saved them both, son. You were braver than any man I've ever known." Danny buried his face against his father's shoulder, his thin frame shaking with relief and exhaustion and pride. They stayed like that for a long moment, the 4 of them, a family forged in love and tested by fear and made stronger by survival. Looking at his family, James felt something shift inside him. For so long, he'd just been surviving, getting through each day, but now he had a reason to truly live. "Thank you," he murmured to Sarah later, when Doc Henderson had left and Danny had reluctantly gone to rest in his own room. "For what?" "For answering my advertisement. For taking a chance on a grumpy farmer and his son. For making this house a home. For loving me when I didn't think I deserved to be loved. For giving me Danny's courage to witness and this perfect little girl to hold." He kissed her temple. "For everything. Thank me." Sarah laughed softly, exhausted but happy. "James, you gave me a life when I had nothing. You gave me purpose and family and love. I'm the one who should be thanking you." Then we're both grateful," James said, cradling baby Rose gently in one arm while holding Sarah with the other. "That's a good way to start." Spring came again to the valley, bringing new grass and new lambs and new beginnings. Sarah recovered from childbirth with the same quiet strength she brought to everything else. Rose grew and thrived, her dark eyes following everything with solemn attention. The community rallied around them in ways Sarah hadn't expected. Women brought food and baby clothes. Men helped James with the spring planting so he could spend more time with his new daughter. Even Victoria Calhoun appeared one day with a beautifully embroidered christening gown. "For the baby," she said simply, handing it to Sarah. "My grandmother made it. It's been in my family for 3 generations, but she paused. I won't be having children, and I'd like Rose to have it. Sarah accepted the gift with grace. Thank you, Victoria. It's beautiful. You've been kind to me, even when I didn't deserve it, Victoria said. That's rare in this world. I wanted you to know I appreciate it. After she left, James came up behind Sarah, wrapping his arms around her waist. You're a better person than I am, he said. I wanted to run her off the property. She's lonely, Sarah said. I understand lonely, and I think she's finally accepting that her path isn't the same as ours. Still, James nuzzled her neck. You're too forgiving, perhaps. But I'd rather be too forgiving than too hard. Life out here is already hard enough without making it harder with bitterness. As Rose grew, the house filled with new sounds, her gurgles and coos, her cries in the night, her laughter when James made funny faces or Danny played peekaboo. The farm thrived under James's careful management and Sarah's nurturing touch. One morning, Sarah was hanging laundry while Rose slept in a basket nearby and Danny played with the barn cats. James came up behind her, his arms going around her waist. Remember the day you arrived? He murmured against her hair. Standing by that wagon, looking like a stiff wind might blow you over, so scared and trying so hard to hide it. I remember thinking you were going to send me right back to Boston, Sarah admitted. You looked so fierce, so large and intimidating. I was scared to death. He turned her in his arms. Scared you'd take one look at me and run. Scared I wouldn't know how to be a husband again. Scared I'd fail you the way I felt I'd failed Margaret. You haven't failed me. Sarah reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the lines around his eyes that crinkled when he smiled. Not once. Not ever. Neither have you. He kissed her softly. I know I don't say it enough, but Sarah, you're everything to me. You and the children. You're my whole world, my reason for breathing, and you're mine. She smiled, thinking back to that terrified woman who'd stepped off the stagecoach nearly a year ago. Who would have thought? A grumpy farmer and a plain spinster finding love in the Montana territory. You're not plain. His voice was fierce, almost angry. Don't ever call yourself that again. You're beautiful, inside and out, and you're mine. Yes, Sarah kissed him back, pouring all her love into it. I'm yours, and you're mine, for now and always. In the basket, Rose began to fuss. James scooped her up, cradling her against his broad chest, with a gentleness that still amazed Sarah after all these months. Their daughter quieted immediately, one tiny fist gripping his finger with surprising strength. She's got you wrapped around her little finger, Sarah observed, watching the way his whole face softened when he looked at their daughter. Just like her mama, James said with a smile that transformed his usually serious features. And I wouldn't have it any other way. Danny came running up, out of breath and excited. Pa, Ma, the Johnson's cow finally had her calf. Can I go see? Mrs. Johnson said I could help name it. After your chores are done, James said, but his tone was indulgent. And take Ma Sarah some of those wild strawberries you've been sneaking. I know you found a patch somewhere. Danny's ears turned red, but he grinned. Yes, Pa. As he ran off, Sarah laughed. How did you know about the strawberries? I'm his father. I know everything. James winked at her. Plus, he had red stains on his fingers yesterday. They stood together in the Montana sunshine, their daughter between them, watching Danny disappear into the field. The mountains rose in the distance, eternal and strong. The creek babbled over stones, constant and sure. The wild roses James had named their daughter for were just beginning to bloom along the fence line, and Sarah thought about how she'd come here with nothing. No money, no prospects, no hope. Just a desperate gamble on a stranger's advertisement, and a heart that refused to stop hoping for something better. But she'd found everything she'd ever wanted, and so much more than she'd ever dared to dream. A home that was truly hers. A family bound not just by law, but by love and choice and shared experiences. A man who loved her with quiet intensity and showed her every day through both words and actions that she was cherished. A life full of purpose and meaning, and the kind of deep satisfaction that came from building something real with your own hands. She'd been so afraid that first day, stepping down from the wagon to meet the giant stranger who would be her husband. Afraid she wouldn't be enough, wouldn't measure up, would be sent away before she even had a chance to prove herself. But she'd learned something in the months since. Love wasn't about being perfect. It wasn't about meeting some impossible standard or being the most beautiful or the most accomplished. It was about two imperfect people choosing each other day after day, in the small moments and the big ones, in the laughter and the tears and everything in between. In the morning, coffee shared in comfortable silence and the passion of their nights together, in the way James still touched her with reverence, and how she'd learned to read his silences as eloquently as his words. It was about trust, about vulnerability, about opening your heart even when you're scared it might break, about letting someone see all of you, the good, the bad, the scared, the hopeful, and trusting they'll stay anyway. And sometimes, if you're very lucky and very brave, it was about finding someone who saw all your flaws and loved you, not despite them, but including them, who held you gently even when they could crush you, who took it slow because it was your first time, and made sure every moment was filled with care and consideration. "What are you thinking about?" James asked, noting her expression, the way her eyes had gone soft and distant. "About the first night we were married," Sarah admitted. "How nervous I was. How I begged you to be gentle. How you promised to go slow and take care of me. I meant it." His arm tightened around her, Rose cradled safely between them. "Every word, every promise. I know, and you kept your promise. Not just that night, but every day since." She looked up at him, her heart in her eyes. "You're still gentle with me, still patient, still making sure I feel safe and cherished and loved. Always will be." He kissed the top of her head, breathing in the scent of her hair. "You're precious to me, Sarah. The most precious thing in my world, aside from our children. I'll spend the rest of my life making sure you know that, making sure you never doubt it." Rose cooed in his arms, as if agreeing with her father. Sarah laughed, leaning into her husband's strength, feeling the solid warmth of him against her side. "I love you, James Thornton," she said, the words as natural as breathing now. "And I love you, Sarah Thornton." His voice was rough with emotion, the way it always got when his feelings overwhelmed him. "More than I ever thought possible. More than I have words to say. You've given me a life I didn't think I'd ever have again. Hope I thought I'd lost. A family that makes every hard day worth it. Then show me," Sarah whispered, that familiar heat building between them, despite the broad daylight and the baby in his arms. "Tonight, after the children are asleep, show me. Every night for the rest of our lives," he promised, his eyes darkening with desire and love in equal measure. "I'll show you every single night how much you mean to me." Done, and as the sun climbed higher in the Montana sky, painting everything in shades of gold and green and the soft pink of wild roses, Sarah knew he would, because they'd built something rare and precious together. Something worth protecting and nurturing and fighting for. They'd built a love that would last a lifetime, a love that had started with a simple advertisement and a desperate hope, a love that had grown through patience and trust and countless small kindnesses, through storms weathered and fears overcome, through the everyday magic of building a life together, the kind of love that only comes when two lonely souls find exactly what they've been searching for in each other, the kind that makes you grateful for every sunrise and every sunset, for every shared meal and every quiet moment, for every challenge overcome together and every joy celebrated side by side. And Sarah had never been more grateful for anything in her entire life than she was for that moment of courage when she'd answered that advertisement, when she'd climbed on that train heading west with nothing but a carpet bag and a hope. She'd begged him to be gentle that first night, nervous and uncertain, and so afraid of disappointing him. And he'd promised to take it slow, to care for her, to make sure she felt safe every step of the way. He'd kept that promise, not just in their marriage bed, but in everything. In the way he spoke to her, always with respect and often with tenderness. The way he looked at her, like she was something miraculous. The way he built their life together, brick by patient brick, giving her time to adjust and grow and find her place. And in return, Sarah had given him everything she had, her trust, which had been hard-won after a lifetime of disappointments, her loyalty, unwavering, even when tested, her love, freely given and constantly renewed, her whole heart placed in his careful hands with the faith that he would treasure it. It was more than enough. It was everything. As darkness fell and they herded the children inside, Danny chattering about the new calf and Rose beginning to fuss for her evening feeding, Sarah looked around their home one more time. At the curtains she'd sewn with her own hands, the garden she'd planted and tended, the cradle James had built with such care, the flowers he'd carved into it, a silent love letter. This was her life now, this rough farm in the Montana Territory, so far from the genteel poverty of her Boston existence. This quiet, intense man who showed his love through actions more than words. These children who'd become hers, not through birth alone, but through choice and commitment and everyday care. This simple, honest existence, so far from the world she'd known, where success was measured not in social standing or fine dresses, but in healthy crops and fat lambs and children who laughed easily and often, and she wouldn't trade it for anything. Not for all the balls in Boston or the finest silk dresses, or a return to what society called civilization, because this rough, beautiful, challenging life was real in a way her old life had never been, because she'd found what she'd been looking for all along, even when she hadn't known she was searching for it. Not wealth or status or easy comfort, though she had comfort here in the things that mattered, but home. Real, true home, the kind that lives in your heart and warms you from the inside out, the kind that makes you want to be better, do better, give more, the kind that's built on love and trust and the everyday choice to show up for each other, the kind that makes you grateful for every single day, even the hard ones. Especially the hard ones, because those are the days that test you and prove your commitment and make the good days even sweeter. The kind that starts with a simple promise. Be gentle, take it slow, and grows into something beautiful and lasting and true. Something that weathers storms and celebrates sunshine. Something that holds steady through change and grows deeper with time. Sarah closed the door behind them, shutting out the Montana night and the chill wind that had started to blow down from the mountains. Inside, her family waited. Her husband, who was checking the fire and adding wood for the night. Her son, who was carefully washing his hands at the basin without being asked. Her daughter, who was looking up at her with those solemn dark eyes that saw everything. Her family, her home, her life, and it was perfect. Not perfect in the sense of flawless or without challenge, but perfect in the way that mattered. Perfect because it was real and earned and chosen. Perfect because it was built on love and trust and the courage to be vulnerable. Perfect because it was hers, just exactly, wonderfully, beautifully perfect.